All right, guys, I'm back. McFly. I am here tonight to talk to you guys about the movie that just came out on Friday, November 2nd, Bohemian Rhapsody. So I was always really kind of skeptical about this. I was excited when the trailer was released back in May. It looked like it was going to be really good. And then they released the second trailer. And that's what really got me, was in the second trailer, they show Freddie Mercury in the studio with Brian May, Roger Taylor, John Deacon, and their wives. Not Freddies, because he wasn't married. But as they're in there, they're doing the We Will Rock You anthem. And I had to stop and think, because I was like, wait a minute, they're in the studio, they're recording We Will Rock You for the very first time, but they can't be, because Freddie Mercury didn't have a mustache at the time when they made We Will Rock You. We Will Rock You released in 1977 on their album News of the World, right next to We Are the Champions. And usually whenever you hear We Will Rock You on the radio, they're going to play We Are the Champions right after. So Freddie still had like short to medium long hair. He didn't have a mustache. I mean, even in the music video, when you look it up, you can see it. The only one who had long hair was, I think, Roger and Bryan. And Bryan's always had long hair. So to see Freddie Mercury with his mustache and short hair is not right to me. So that immediately hit red flags with me that, oh my God, this is probably not going to be consistent. I'm kind of freaking out right now because Queen is my all-time favorite band. They've been my favorite band for almost half my life. And they wouldn't be my favorite band if it weren't for my mom, who played Bohemian Rhapsody in the car with me. Literally every single classic rock band that I absolutely love, including Styx. Styx I've loved since I was 8 years old. And then Queen came along and knocked Styx out of the park. And I actually thought that Bohemian Rhapsody was sung by Styx. I was about 12, because I was in 6th grade at the time, almost 7th. And I said, man, Styx sings is really good. My mom's like, this isn't Styx, this is Queen. And I'm like, who the hell's Queen? So I look him up and actually start getting more and more into him. And so that summer of 2010, I got really into Queen. Like, I've been into Queen for 8 years strong. They've always been my favorite band. I had, my little obsessions with like the Beatles and a little bit with Styx, but I always come right back to Queen because their music is phenomenal. I can't get away from it. I've got all their albums, and I have all the Beatles albums too, but Queen was the one that was really hard to find because a lot of the albums, unlike the Beatles, they weren't reissued. So I have no doubt that the albums that I have that are old are the originals. The only ones that I have reprints are Day at the Races, A Kind of Magic, and Innuendo. And Innuendo is an incredibly hard album to find because it was released in 1990. And that was their very last album with Freddie singing vocals on every single track. So it's incredibly hard to find that one used because whenever I look up on eBay, Queen Innuendo, all I get is reprints. And if I want to get an older one, it's roughly around $60 or more. And they're all in the UK. And it sucks. It's decent price, for that. But I don't want to pay $60 that my friend Carl has told me at his record store they price it at $20, which that sounds about right for a Queen album. So whenever I go to the record store and I see an album that I have a reprint of, I take that one and then I go back to that record store and I sell them my reprint. That way I get more money for Queen albums. And that's the other thing too, great about Spotify is that because I have almost every single album on my iTunes. The Spotify has every single album on there. Like their singles, they have everything. So I absolutely love Spotify for that because now if I want to listen to Queen, I can just pull it up on my Spotify on my TV, my laptop, my iPod, my iPhone. It's one of the greatest things. Honestly, Spotify has made me decide to sell my iPod because I just don't use it anymore. I don't even know why I have it. It's just sitting there dead in my drawer. Anyway, back to Queen. So I'm going to give you guys a brief little history, and then I'm going to talk about the movie. And I would love to talk 2 hours about this. Actually, I'd love to talk the whole night about it, but I don't want to torture my professor and you guys because you'd probably tune out within like 2 hours, if not earlier, because this is a lot of information to take in. So the 3 months that I learned about this band, I'm going to tell you guys in 30 minutes, and the rest of the 30 minutes is going to be about the movie. It might be actually less for the history. We'll find out. So Queen started back in 1971. They came out with their first album, and that was just Queen. You know how like Led Zeppelin has Led Zeppelin 2, Led Zeppelin 3, just like that. So they were formed, originally it was Brian May and Roger Taylor, and they had a lead singer, Tim Staffel. Well, they had known Freddie Mercury prior. They had met him, I think, back in 1967, 1968, somewhere around there. And they were actually sharing an apartment, or what they call back in Britain, a flat. So they all knew each other pretty well. And then Tim Staffel decided that he wanted to leave and do something else. So then Freddie joined in, and they were still trying to find a bassist because it was just Brian, Freddie, and Roger in the band, still called Smile. And then they came up, John Deacon joined in like 1970, I think. They started their album in February of 1971. I believe that's actually when it was released. And that's actually a really good album. Honestly, their earlier stuff is really good. I do like Queen too. I think the two songs that I really like, actually there's the songs that I like off of that album are Great King Rat, Doing All Right, which you actually get to hear in the movie in the very beginning. That's one of their earliest songs. And so I was like absolutely ecstatic to hear that when I was sitting there in the theater and that came on. And I was actually singing along with it. And you have Son and Daughter. Honestly, the album, if you listen to it, it's really good. Their second album too is really good. That's the one with one of my all-time favorites, March of the Black Queen. That came out, 1972, because then their third album, Sheer Heart Attack, came out in 1973. And that had obviously on there Sheer Heart Attack and Killer Queen. And that is what brought them to America. That is what made them explode in America, was Killer Queen. So that's when they really started to lift off. And actually today is the anniversary of that album. It was released November 8th, 1973. So there's here to that. I saw that posted on, I think it was Ultimate Classic Rock, and I was confused because they said the anniversary of this album, and I thought it was the 1978 album Jazz. But then after Sheer Heart Attack, we get the mother lode of albums that they've ever made. And it's A Night at the Opera. And this one has all the classics on there. You know, it's got You're My Best Friend. Was Somebody to Love on that one? No, it wasn't. It wasn't that one. It's 1976. That's A Night at the Opera, or A Day at the Races. That's the album that's on. And you've got You're My Best Friend and Bohemian Rhapsody. You also have I'm in Love with My Car, which they were going to release as a single, but decided not to. It's a weird song, honestly. You listen to it, and you're just like, what are you doing here, Roger? Roger Taylor wrote that song. And he actually sang it. And if you listen to him and Rod Stewart, they actually sound kind of the same, because they've got that real, scratchy voice. So I'm honestly surprised my parents haven't texted me anything yet, asking to say hello to the dogs. Anyway, after A Night at the Opera, during that, so when Bohemian Rhapsody came out, he knew that it was going to be, they really wanted to release the song, but it's 5 minutes and 55 seconds. They were having such a hard time trying to get it on the air because it was just such a long song. But that's not even the longest song they had. The longest song I can remember, it was even on that album, which was the Prophet song, which is another one of my favorites, is 8 minutes long. So Freddie Mercury was really good friends with Kenny Everett, who was a DJ. So Kenny was like, you know what? Give me that record. Give me the single. I'm going to play it as many times as I can on my show. And that's what he did. He constantly played it on a loop. And so it got mixed reviews. I used to love this song because it's Bohemian Rhapsody. But after, I think it was what was it? 2011, 2012. I think it's 2011. I was in 8th grade. They put it on Rock Band 3. And everybody was singing it. It was just all over the place. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm done. I can't listen to it anymore. I love Queen so much. I do. I absolutely love them. And sometimes I'll sit there and I'll listen to it, but I just can't do it because it's so overplayed. And you wouldn't even think that I would say that coming from someone who's loved Queen almost their entire life. And they fought so hard to get the song on the radio, and I can't listen to it anymore. So then they came out after that. They came out in 1976, 1976, 77. It's somewhere around there. No, 76, because it's A Night at the Opera. It's A Day at the Races. And that one had Somebody to Love on there. It didn't have a whole lot of other ones. I'd have to look at the album again. And then after that, we go to my favorite album, which is News of the World. And that one's very famous. You guys might even recognize it from the Family Guy episode when Brian found it in the attic in Peter's record collection, and Stewie was actually afraid of the album. Fun fact about that, Seth MacFarlane was actually terrified of the album when he was a kid, so it was a little, a little homage to that. So it is a very strange album cover. It's a robot reaching into a movie theater, picking people up, and the back of it has the robot holding what is basically the band. That one has We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, Spread Your Wings and Fly Away, written by John Deacon, the bassist. It's got My Melancholy Blues. It's one of my favorite albums. You'd think I would know the entire set list of this. It's All Dead, written by Brian May. It's one of my all-time favorite albums. I don't know what it is about it, but I just absolutely love it. And then you have anyway, it's got It's Late on there, which is another great one. It's just a really good sit down and listen to record. You know, it's very smooth, it's very relaxing. It's very similar to a jazz album with a couple of songs like It's Late and My Melancholy Blues. And then you have the actual jazz album that has Bicycle Race and Fat Bottom Girls. That's one of the all-time, if you get a CD of Queen's greatest hits, those are going to be on there, like 10 or 12. That's like the number that they'll be. After that, we came out with The Game, which was their new transition into what was basically the 80s. It was released in 1979, but that's when Freddie Mercury cut his hair, and it has the hit Crazy Little Thing Called Love on there. It's got a couple other good ones on there. It's got Sail Away, Sweet Sister, which is one of my favorites too, written by Brian May as well. And then you have, they did the soundtrack for the 1980 classic, I think it's a classic, Flash Gordon. And I actually met Sam Jones and got him to sign the Flash Gordon album with the original Saran wrap inside of it. And I'm going to do a little sidebar here because it just still makes me mad. When I was back in Phoenix, back at home, Sam Jones was doing autographs, and I had the album. I had the shirt that Freddie Mercury wore, not the exact one, but a reprint of it. And I was wearing it at Comic-Con, and I'm standing there with the album with the original Saran wrap around it, the original picture of Emperor Ming inside, and the Flash Gordon Funko. And there's these two older ladies in front of me who look back and go, I bet she's never even seen the movie. And I'm like, I have all the gear. How have I not seen the movie? How? How are you going to accuse me of that? And she comes out and she's looking at my album. She's like, oh, it's brand new. And I was like, actually, it's the 1980 original with the original Saran wrap. So if you would kindly get back in your lane and move forward so I can get Sam Jones' autograph, I would appreciate that. Anyway, I have that album. I never listened to it. It sits there framed now, which is why I absolutely was glad that the Flash Gordon album actually got to see the light of day again, because it had never been played. It just sat in my record trunk. So I thought, you know what, let's just get him to sign it, we'll frame it, and we'll hang it up, because I never listened to this album anyway. So it's framed up there. After that, we get Hot Space, which a lot of people did not like. They could not stand the Hot Space album. I like it, you know. The thing with me is that if you're a really big fan of the band, you're not going to care what they put out. You're going to love it either way, unless it gets overplayed like Bohemian Rhapsody, such as myself. I'll listen to the song, but I can't do it. If it comes on, I'll listen to it. If I'm in the middle of it, I'll listen to it. But it just kind of got a little tiresome for me. It didn't have that same spark that it used to. But that album has Under Pressure, which was the one where they had David Bowie on it. That one's actually got a couple of good ones on there. It's got Body Language, which is another one that's on the Greatest Hits CDs that if you get. It's got Back Chat, Staying Power. It's got a lot of really good tunes. Cool Cat is another one that's really good. I was going to say Dragon Attack, but that's on the Game album. And that's actually a really good song. If you look at them, you know, they tell you who wrote what. And John Deacon was really good at writing songs. He wrote Another One Bites the Dust, and that one was on... Is that one on the Game? Yeah, it's on the Game. It's on the Game album. He's got really good ones. He wrote You're My Best Friend. He wrote Another One Bites the Dust. Dragon Attack, which has got a really good beat to it, honestly, if you listen to it. Just pull it up on Spotify or anything like that, YouTube, whatever. It's really good. After Hot Space, they did take a small break, but it was like a year break. Because then they got back together in 1983. Hot Space came out in 1982. Because they just finished the tour in 1981. So that's what they would do, is they would do tour, album, tour, album, tour, album. They would just keep going. So in 1984, that's when they released The Works. And that was actually the very first Queen album that I bought. It had the original Saran Wrap, but I took it off like an idiot. I should have listened to my mom saying, leave it on there. But, I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. So that one has Radio Gaga on there, which is another really big one. Tear It Up on there. It's another one of my favorites. It's actually a really, really good song. That one also has Man on the Prowl, which I really liked. It's got like that 50s tune to it. So it's like if you're listening to the Stray Cats. If you guys know who the Stray Cats are, they did Stray Cat Strut and what's that other famous one? I'm drawing a blank. You guys will figure it out. You look up Stray Cats, you'll find out. But it's like that. It's that rockabilly kind of type. And then that one also had I Want to Break Free. And it's a hard life. I Want to Break Free is probably one of the best ones because of the music video they did. And you can look it up on YouTube. What it is it's a really good song. They came out with it. They weren't really sure what to do with the music video. So Roger Taylor, the drummer's girlfriend, was like, well, why don't you guys just dress up in drag? And he was like, oh my God, that's a great idea. So that's exactly what they did. Oh, sorry. They dressed up in women's clothing. Freddie was dressed as the mom. He had a turtleneck tank top sweater on, a mini leather skirt, pantyhose, and a pair of high heels, and he was vacuuming. And Bryan had like a nightgown on. He had his hair in curlers. He was wearing these little pink bunny slippers. John Deacon is dressed as the grandma. He's got the black outfit on, and the gray curlers, and they even gave him the makeup to make him look older. And you have the oh so adorable Roger Taylor as he's blonde. He's got a wig on, a blonde wig. I think, did he have pigtails? No, he didn't. It was just straight hair and a schoolgirl costume. And it's one of the greatest music videos they ever did. And it got banned from MTV because they were like, this is too much for our viewers. We can't do this. And Queen was like, well, all right. So I guess we just won't do any tours there for a while then. And then in 1986, that's when they came out with A Kind of Magic. And that was actually a soundtrack to Highlander, if you guys ever watched that. It's got Clancy Brown, who, oddly enough, is the voice of Mr. Krabs on SpongeBob. And I look at that and I just can't see it because Clancy Brown is the Kurgan. And if you've ever watched Shawshank Redemption, he's that like really hard security guard there. He's got this unmistaken look. Like he can, when you look at him, you're like, that's Mr. Krabs. It's just the weirdest thing to just hear every single time he would talk in Highlander after I found out that he was Mr. Krabs. I couldn't take it seriously because I would just expect him to say, arg, 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 arg. And I just couldn't. So I used to like that movie, and my mom sat there and she was like, this is so cheesy. I don't know why you're watching it. And I'm like, because I can, Mom. I don't need your judgment. I just came in here to watch a movie, not be attacked. So that album came out with obviously the song A Kind of Magic. And according to my mom, it's a really good running song. It also came out with Pain is So Close to Pleasure, 1 Year of Love. Give Me the Prize is a really good one. It's got a really good guitar riff. Princes of the Universe. I'm trying to think of what else is on that song. Friends Will Be Friends, which is a really good song. I love that song. And it gets me emotional sometimes because I'll hear it and it just makes me think of my friend group back home. And I don't know. That's probably my all-time favorite song about friends. Really, it really is. It's really good. And then you have, after that, that's when they took a break. So going to the concerts, they did Live Aid in 1985, July, was it July 13th? I think it was July 13th they did it. They did Live Aid. And there were all these different groups in front of you. Everybody had a 20-minute time slot. Well, at the time, Freddie Mercury was having voice. I think he had pharyngitis. It was something to do with his throat. And the doctor told him, he was like, hey, man, don't go out there and sing because you're going to like really mess up your vocals. And he's like, I'm Freddie Mercury. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to put a show on because these people came here for a show. So I'm going out there. And if you watch the footage of Live Aid concert, you can hear it in his voice that he's not okay. And they went out there, and everybody backstage, Paul McCartney, Elton John, everybody, they're like, oh, it's Queen. Yeah. So they go out there, and as they're back there, after 5 minutes of them being out there, they're like, oh my God, they just stole the show. Are you kidding me? They stole the entire concert. Queen rocked it. This was at Wembley Stadium in London. And then a year later, as they were doing their kind of magic tour, they actually did it again there in Wembley Stadium. And that's actually one of their most known concerts that you can find CDs and you can actually get it on DVD, the full concert. And it has like backstage and everything. And then you have, they did it right after that. They went into Hungary and Budapest. And I remember when that actually came out in theaters, that was 2012, 2013. I remember it was my freshman year. And they came out with it in theaters. They were showing the concert. So my mom was very nice and took me to go see it. And I loved it. Even though I'd seen it on YouTube thousands of times, it was still really nice to see it on the big screen. And I think I still have the tickets somewhere in my room. And they were very funny. I'm not even going to lie. So when you see them backstage, they're hilarious together. So I think that was actually their very last concert. That was when Freddie Mercury was actually diagnosed with AIDS. It was shortly, I think it was 1987 is when he was diagnosed. And they all kind of, they split up, they parted their ways because they just needed a break. And they decided, this is actual quote that they said, was that they needed to recharge their batteries. So they did what they did. Freddie Mercury went on and released a solo album, which I have, which was incredibly hard to find. And it's his Mr. Bad Guy album. And that has Mr. Bad Guy, Made in Heaven. I think it has Made in Heaven, or was that on the Made in Heaven album? No, it was on his album because he actually did a music video for it. And then he has I Was Born to Love You, which is one of my all-time favorite songs. And then that brings me back. I forgot to mention that another hit that was on A Night at the Opera was Love of My Life. And I think the version of that song live is a lot better than the recorded version. So they all split up. They do what they want. Freddie does his solo album. Roger did his own, we'll go on Roger. Roger did his own solo album, but he had done a couple albums prior to that. But he started his own group called The Cross. And I haven't listened, last time I listened to his band, it's probably like 8 years ago. So I don't really remember a lot of what his band came out with. I remember some of his solo stuff. And then you have Brian May. He came out with his own Starfleet. And I think I do. I have that album. It's weird. It's a Brian May album, though. You listen to it, and you're like, this is... Because he was going to be an astrologist. Later on, he actually did get his PhD in astrology. I think it was like 2008 he got it. But it was just the most Brian May thing, especially when you listen to A Night at the Opera. His song 39 is about these astronauts who come back like 30 years, and they haven't aged, but... Or maybe it was 100. I think it was 100 years. They haven't aged, but their families and loved ones are all gone. So a lot of the songs that he wrote, you listen to it and you're just like, this is not surprising for something for Brian May to write. And then John Deacon went on, and he was kind of like a producer for this group. And what they were is they were a British comedy music group. They made fun of, is it the Beastie Boys, the No Sleep Till Brooklyn. And then they did a couple other songs. And he's actually in like every single music video that they did. And their music is so stupid, but it was funny. And they came back together in 1988. So they were only apart for about a year or two. They came back in 1988 and they recorded the album The Miracle. And that has the song The Miracle on it. Headlong is Innuendo. Khashoggi Ship, Party. That one's actually a really good album. You have to listen to Party and Khashoggi Ship because they go into each other. That one also has Rain Must Fall, which is a really good one. That was when they decided that they were going to have everything written by Queen. It wasn't going to be by just, John wrote this, Bryan and Freddie wrote this. It was Queen wrote it. Queen wrote everything. And then they came out with Innuendo, so The Miracle got released in 1989. And then they came out with Innuendo in 1990, and that was one of Freddie's last albums. That one has Innuendo, which I got in trouble for in middle school, my 7th grade year, because I read it as a poem, and my principal at the time, Dr. Stair, came up to me. He came up to my mom, and he was like, man, I was just humming that song today. And my mom was like, what? And he comes up to me, and he starts singing, talking about other songs on the album, and I was like, oh, wow. All right, well, I'm glad this wasn't an assignment. So he and I used to throw Queen quotes back at each other. And I actually, I originally had News of the World, an original copy of, and then my mom got me a reprint of it. So I gave him my original copy of. And then it wasn't until just recently I actually got another original copy of News of the World. So that one has Headlong, Innuendo, These Are the Days of Our Lives, which is it's a really sad song because if you look at the music video, you can really see how much Freddie deteriorated. And he had to have so much makeup on because when he had AIDS, he was getting lesions on his face. So he had to have so much heavy makeup, and you could just see how thin he was. And it's depressing. I'm Going Slightly Mad is another one. It's such a weird song, but it's amazing. Yeah, she was just waiting for me to bring up my mom just texted me. She was just waiting for me to bring up the Innuendo thing. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Anyway, and then it was until 1994 they came out with Made in Heaven, that they have found some songs that they hadn't finished with Freddie. They still had vocals for, so they finished it. Mother Love is one of them because almost the entire song is Freddie Mercury talking, and then the rest are singing, not talking. He doesn't talk, he sings. And then you have Brian May, who comes on and sings the rest of it. That one's got a lot of really good ones. It's got probably my all-time favorite Queen song. It's A Winter's Tale. I love that song. It's just so smooth, and I don't know, it makes me feel really happy. You have Made in Heaven, which is another one. You have Let Me Live, which that one's really good because it has Freddie, Bryan, and Roger singing. John never sung any of the songs because he couldn't sing. So they weren't like the Fab Four. They couldn't all four just sing. John would sing in, but, you have all these 3 other great musicians singing over him. So it's like he's just kind of there. And then, they were just re-releasing a lot of different albums, greatest hits, And then it wasn't until 2014 that they actually found more songs they hadn't done. And they said more songs, but when the album came out, I was really excited because they came out with it. I got it for Christmas. And I looked at it and I realized there was only one song that was new, and it was Let Me In Your Heart Again. And it's still an amazing song. I love that song. But the rest of them were just greatest hits that I'd already heard. And I was like, okay, you just made my grandparents pay like $20 for this album for me to have one song. Why didn't you just release it as a single? Or just not even on an album? Like, there was just no point to this. But, so they haven't found any more. They found that one. But, in 1997, they came out with a song, No One But You, Only the Good Die Young. And it was Roger and Bryan singing it, and John's in there. And that was actually when John was going to retire. He retired in 1997 because he was just like, it's not the band anymore. He's like, I can't go on without Freddie. I've already gone on 7 years, and I just can't do it anymore. Actually, I'm sorry, 5 years, because back in 1992, they did an AIDS benefit concert with George Michael, Annie Lennox, David Bowie. They had a lot of artists out there just singing Queen songs. And it was amazing. And that was the last time John ever performed on stage. And the last time he actually performed was with Roger and Bryan in 1997 on that music video. And it really gets at you because you watch the music video and it's them and they're singing about how they miss him, because I think it was Bryan who wrote it, and he gave it to Roger, and he was like, I want you to look at this and see how it is. And he was like, okay. And he just like stuffed it in a drawer. And then a couple years later, he finds it and he's like, what the hell is this? And he calls Bryan up and he's like, did you give this to me? He goes, yeah, man, I gave that to you like 3 years ago. Why, are you just now looking at it? And he was like, well, yeah. He's like, I don't know what else you had going on. I mean, we weren't like working on any albums. And he's like, I don't know. Well, let's start doing this song. So in the music video, they have a bunch of playbacks of Freddie Mercury during concerts and everything. And then they show him, towards the end. So it really kind of gets at you. And so now with that, I just gave you the brief history of it. And I actually did go for 30 minutes. This is very surprising. No, it's not. It's really not surprising. That is basically the history of Queen. So, in a nutshell, that's what it is. So, moving on to the movie. So, the movie opens up. I'm just going to tell you guys because I liked it. I'm not going to lie. I liked it. But it's just the timelines that they had were completely out of whack. And that's what lost me. They lost me probably about 20, 30 minutes into the movie. And it was like a 2-hour-long movie. So they lost me pretty quick. And I was not surprised to get lost that fast. But they open up with Freddie waking up and getting ready for the Live Aid concert. And then it just goes right to 1971 when he supposedly meets Bryan and Roger at a concert, but he had already knew them prior to that. He was living with those guys at the time. And at the same time, he meets Mary Austin, that Love of My Life is based off of. Mary Austin had actually been dating Brian May for a little bit, and Freddie actually went up to Bryan and was like, are you serious with this girl? And he goes, well, I don't know, not really. And he's like, can I ask her out? And Bryan was like, I really don't care, go for it. So Freddie and Mary lived together till about 1977. Or was it later? No, I think it was later, actually. It was like 1979. Yeah, they had lived together till 1979, and then Freddie went on because he told Mary, he was like, I can't. He's like, I can't do it. I love you, but I can't because I'm gay. And they got that right, but just not at the right time in the movie. So we're seeing later on, after they join together and they make their own album, they get an offer from Jim Reed at, I think it was EMI. And so they make another record. And then all of a sudden, Bryan and Roger and John jump in. They just barge in at Freddie and Mary's apartment. And they go, we're going to America. We just hit number 1 in there. So when they go to America, they start playing Fat Bottom Girls. And I was like, okay, so now we're in 1978. And then it jumps to him playing beginning to play Bohemian Rhapsody. And I was like, hold on a second. Whoa. I was like, what time are we in right now? Because you're telling me you're singing Fat Bottom Girls, which came out in 1978, but now you're telling me that he's just now coming up with Bohemian Rhapsody, which wasn't until 1975 that he did that. So then we go out and he comes out with a song and we're like in 1975 and then it just goes. So we keep going and then we reach 1980 and that's when they make the breakup happening. And that's when they lost me again. I was like, okay, no, the breakup didn't start at this time. It was 1986, 87 when they broke up. And then it jumps to 1984. And they're like, oh, Queen's getting back together, but we're going to write the songs as Queen. And then all of a sudden, Freddie gets diagnosed with AIDS at Live Aid in 1985. And I was like, no, stop. I wanted to get out of my seat and legit say, hold on a second, I need you to pause this movie. Because there were so many other people in the room, and I was just like, if you guys don't know the history of Queen like I do, you're going to get the wrong image of this. So I was losing it in my seat because I couldn't do anything. And I was sitting there just going, no, this isn't right. No. I'm literally sitting in there like fidgeting and moving around because I can't do anything because it was on the wrong timeline and it was driving me mad. So then it shows the end of Live Aid. It shows them that Freddie's telling the band before they go to Live Aid that he has AIDS. And I'm just like, okay, no, that's not what happened. So then he goes, and it's just crazy. I can't. The movie had me, and they lost me. Then they had me again, and they lost me again. And I was just like, I can't do it with this movie. Then they come out and say that Freddie met Jim Hutton, which was his last partner, in 1980. And I was like, no, that's not true. He actually met him later in like 1984, 1985. And they said, and they showed Freddie essentially assaulting Jim Hutton. But Jim Hutton was supposed to be like this, like a waiter or some type at his party. And I was like, no, that's not even close to how he met him. Nor did he even assault Jim. I have the book that Jim wrote called Mercury in Me. And that's like the only book that I've sat down and consistently read. So that book, it talked about how he met him. And he met him in a bar. And Jim is from Ireland. I forget where he said in Ireland. So Jim's this Irish boy, meets Freddie in a bar. Freddie was really interested in him. And sooner or later, they start going out. And I think Jim, it was 1984, because the one thing they did get right with the Live Aid is that Jim was actually there at Live Aid behind stage watching Freddie, because Jim actually acknowledged that in his book. And that's a very hard book to find, because that one's actually on eBay, but the cheapest one you can get is probably $60. And that's for a paperback. And I got mine, I think, for like $13 back in 2013. Yeah, I got that back in 2013 for $13. And he later moved on Jim did move on. They both moved into Garden Lodge, and he had a ton of people living in there with him. You know, a lot of personal assistants and a lot of friends. And Freddie did give every single friend that he had, even the guys in Queen, you know, Roger, Bryan, and John actually had their own female names, because Freddie assigned them their own names. One of his friends was Phoebe. Another one was, what was it? I just remember his name is Peter Stryker. I can't remember what his name was, his female name. Anyway, so it was completely wrong how they introduced that character. As far as, I do know that his mom had actually said a couple of times that his dad wasn't really very supportive of the career that he chose, which was music. He wanted him to do something else. And so Freddie actually would kind of, you know, he'd just sit up in his room, and he idolized Jimi Hendrix. And actually, honestly, Freddie was an artist. He went to Ealing Art College and drew and paint. And he would draw and he would paint. And he did a drawing of Jimi Hendrix, which is amazing. And he actually drew the Queen logo and, you know, Queen, like the actual word Queen. And he drew the logo. He was just phenomenal at art. And so, I'm trying to think here. It's really hard. I'm like drawing a blank for some reason. But the movie, it moved around a lot. And that's what I was afraid of that would happen. And it did. And so I was really upset with that. And it was really rushed, too. The director, Bryan Singer, was actually fired midway through set because he was consistently late. So you're terrible. And I'm really mad, too, because they had another director come up. I forget what his name was. But when you watch the movie and it shows the credits, it still says directed by Bryan Singer. And I was like, no, you guys should have put Bryan Singer and this new director, or you should have put the new director, because now Bryan Singer is getting credit for this movie. And he did a terrible job because he was fired halfway through. Now, the actors who played the band were incredible. Rami Malek, just insane, because when the trailer came out and he had the false teeth in his... So Freddie was born with 4 extra incisors, and he didn't want to get them removed because he was so afraid that it was going to affect his vocals. So he just didn't do it. He was just like, I'll just deal with it. I hate him, but I'll deal with it because it gives me this voice. So he had the false teeth in, and seeing him move exactly how Freddie moved in concerts, it took me back to just watching the music videos and everything, because I was just like, oh my God, he's got the moves down. He's amazing at this. I can't believe he's doing it. And it was blowing my mind how well he was. And then you have Willem Lee, who played Brian May, who looks and sounds exactly like Brian. If you hear Willem Lee talk and then you hear Brian May talk, it's like the exact same person. Like if you just took their vocals, I couldn't tell you who was who. And then you have Ben Hardy, who played Roger Taylor, who looked like him. But it was kind of weird. Because the band's heights are, Roger and Freddie were the same height, 5'9". John Deacon's 5'11", Brian May's 6'1". And then they had John and Freddie were the same height in the movie. Roger was taller a little bit, and obviously Brian's way taller, I was fine with that. Because, if you have someone taller than Brian, it's going to be really hard to find someone else who's tall. If you have somebody who's playing Freddie or any other band, any other members of the band, it's going to be really hard to find someone who's taller than them to play Brian May, because he was a tall guy. He's 6'1". I think I already said that. So the guy that played John Deacon, Joe Mazzello, he's actually an American actor. He did amazing. He looked like him. He had, he did the stances just like him. He did the little dances that John did on stage, and it was insane. The facial expressions, the way that he talked was exactly like John. So it was insane. And John is very, very quiet. He's very a low talker. He's kind of just like this. He's very, very quiet. He's just he just moves around. He's very simple. And, Joe captured that really well. The only thing I didn't like about Remy was that the way that he talked. So Freddie was very fast when he talked. He talked kind of like how I'm talking right now. With Remy, he was just like, we're just four misfits playing for other misfits who don't belong. And it was just super slow. And I'm just like, okay, man, you got to pick it up, because you're making me fall asleep here. You're not sounding like Freddie. You're dragging it out too much. And you got to talk fast. You got to go, man. Because Freddie he talked just the way I talk, the same speed. So, or I talk the way Freddie did. I really don't know. I'm just saying. He didn't drag his words out. He didn't do that. So that bothered me throughout the movie whenever he would talk. The only reason why I would buy the movie on DVD is just to see the behind the scenes, honestly. Because I don't know. Like I said, I liked the movie. It was just, there were just so many flaws in it. And I couldn't do it. It drove me insane the entire time I was sitting there in my seat. The 2 hours I was sitting in my seat, I was just like, I can't. And it made me really want to, sit there as I was watching it. I was like, I really want to make my own script about this movie. And I'd like to take it from where they left off and continue, but do a better job. Or I can just redo the entire movie. It'd be such a long movie, but because they did it in 2.5 hours. Now the comedy, was it 2.5 hours? No, it was 2 hours and 15 minutes is how long the movie is. Almost 2.5. It had really good comedy in it, I won't lie. Every joke that they had in there, I laughed at. And another thing about the movie, too, is back in 1992, we got the movie Wayne's World. That was originally just an SNL skit. Mike Myers and Dana Carvey were in that because they were the main characters in Wayne's World. So what they wanted to do was, for the scene where they're headbanging to Bohemian Rhapsody, originally the crew wanted to do a Guns N' Roses song, and Mike Myers was like, no, we have to do Bohemian Rhapsody. And he was like, and the crew was like, no, because Guns N' Roses would be so much better. He goes, no, we're doing Bohemian Rhapsody, or we're shutting the production down. That's final. So they put Bohemian Rhapsody in there, and Mike Myers brought Queen right back up, because Queen was slowly dying. So a lot of people weren't listening to him. They didn't care anymore. But Mike Myers brought him right back up to the top. As soon as that movie was released, Bohemian Rhapsody was in the top 40. It was like number 2, I think. So he brought them right back up. And so I think it was right that they had Mike Myers in the movie because he is the reason why Queen is even more popular today. It has the same popularity that it had when they were big back in the, the 70s and the 80s. He brought them back up to that. So it's only fair that they actually had him in the movie. And he plays the Scottish guy. They said it wasn't even a real guy. They said it was probably a depiction of this, like one of the guys that worked for EMI. But I loved it. I loved a lot of the, so I said I kind of liked it. I liked it. The comedy aspect is what really made me love it. Is because it was perfect. The comedy was exactly how these guys actually were. So I don't know them personally. So what I've seen from interviews and behind the scenes and everything is how they were. And they were very funny. They had a really good sense of humor. So that's how I see it. When I see the jokes in the movie, I'm like, that's about right. Because that sounds about, the kind of thing that they would say or do. So the movie, honestly, it's still out. It's only been a week. So, I mean, you guys, yeah, a lot of people said they loved it. They said it was great. But for someone who has followed and studied Queen for half their life, it was kind of a slap in the face because you've been waiting so long for this movie. I've been waiting about 9 years for this movie to come out, and it was nothing what I thought it was going to be. It was terrible to me because you wait so long for this. You had Sacha Baron Cohen lined up who didn't want Freddie Mercury to get rated PG-13, which is what the movie was rated. And they slip in a couple F words in there, but enough to be PG-13. So you just can't PG-13 Freddie Mercury because he was such a charismatic and just flamboyant person that you can't water him down. Because of him, I mean, there's a lot of things that I took from him. One of them is just not caring what people say and think. I just don't care. And he didn't. He's like, I don't really care what they think. I really don't. So I picked up on that, and I just don't. You say something, I'm like, all right, are you done? Because I got things to do. And that's exactly what he would do. They'd say something stupid to him, and he goes, are you done? Because I got to get back to all these people who actually want to ask me important questions, and you're asking me this stupid question. So are you done? Can I move on? So I took that a lot from him. And they actually posted a thing on there, too, about asking how Freddie inspired you. And that's how he inspired me, was just not care anymore. You don't care. So what they don't like you? Who cares? You move on. It's not going to bring you back. I don't care. You're not the one who's living you're not living my life. I'm living my life. I'm going to live my life however I want to. And that doesn't include you. I don't need you to tell me how to live my life. And that's exactly how he went. And so that's what I picked up was, oh my God, at 12 years old in middle school, this is an incredible thing to pick up, is that I just didn't care. I'd get these kids saying stuff to me in middle school, and I'm just like, I'm like, is that it? That's all you got? All right. Anyway, back to this, because you just killed some of my brain cells. I don't care what you just said. I just want you to be quiet. I just want to get on with my life. That's all I want. And so that's the easiest way to get somebody, just leave you alone. If you're just like, I don't care. I really do not care. And so my principal that caught me citing innuendo at a poetry thing even said that. He was like, I like it because she marches to a beat of her own drum. And that's exactly how Freddie was. And that's where I picked it up from, was just not caring anymore. And he was not only, marching to the beat of his own drum, he was incredibly caring to, his friends and family, and was just an incredible person. You watch a lot of his music videos that he did solo, and it's insane because he had such a wild imagination. And that's what I loved about him so much, is that even, being an adult, he still had the imagination of, a child would have. And I loved that. He brought everything that he dreamed of to life. He brought it all up. If he thought of something, he brought it. He brought it out to life to show the world. And I loved it because his music really got me through a lot. especially "It's a Winter's Tale." Winter's Tale. That one's one of the songs that can really, calm me down after a stressful situation or a breakdown. That's one of the ones that really just, I don't know, it just really soothes me. Another one is "Too Much Love Will Kill You." That's a really good one. Freddie Mercury did. It was like a small concert, if you want to call it, like recording with Spanish opera singer Montserrat Caballé. And they did Barcelona, "How Can I Go On," and "Take Me Home." I think that's what it's called. But his song, "How Can I Go On," and the other, I gotta pull it up because it's gonna bother me. It's one of my all-time favorite songs to listen to. And I don't know. It's something about coming home. I gotta find it. Let me pull it up. I don't care about the Beatles right now. I'm talking about Queen. Where is it? It's gonna make me go into my playlists. Let's go to the home. "Guide Me Home." That's what it is. "Guide Me Home" and "How Can I Go On." Those are one of my all-time favorites by him. Why is Bohemian Rhapsody in here? Yeah, why not? Anyway. So, I'm actually going to give a little shout out to my mom and my hairdresser, Natalie, who her son, Leighton, is an enormous Queen fan, just like I am. And I love this kid to death. I absolutely love him. Like, I would adopt this child if they ever put him up for adoption, which they never would. But I would take this child because he, for Halloween, dressed up as Freddie Mercury, had the bottomless mic, had everything. And I was just like, I love this kid. I really hope that my future kids are just like this kid because this is amazing. This is like what I really want. And my mom even said, because she sent us a video of him, he's a genius kid. He's 8. He's 8 years old, dressed up as Freddie Mercury. Took a Bluetooth speaker and played Freddie Mercury singing live while he was trick-or-treating and sung to it. And I was just like, oh my God, Leighton, you're a genius. That's such a great idea. I was like, why did I never come up with that? It's insane. And I was just like, oh my God, man, I really hope that you actually continue to dress up like this and do like different costumes of him like every year because this is the best. I absolutely love this. And I was like, man, I'm actually jealous of this 8-year-old kid because he's got this cool Freddie Mercury costume. He's got a bottomless mic. He's got the yellow jacket. He's got everything, man. That's all you need is the yellow jacket and the bottomless mic because that's like the best Freddie Mercury thing to have. This kid like got me thinking, oh my God, I need to step up my Halloween game because he just beat me. He beat every single kid. I was like, you know what? Just give him all the candy. Just give him everything. You know what? Just give him a house. Give him a record deal. I don't care. Just give this kid everything. Because he just won at life. I absolutely loved it. 53 minutes I've been going. I could go for 53 more, but I won't because my parents have listened to me talk about Queen for 9 years straight. And I'm pretty sure they're tired of it because my mom even told me when I was obsessing over Queen at 13 years old, why don't you just find somebody else so obsessive? You love Kiss, why don't you talk about them? And I'm like, yeah, but Kiss is Kiss. This is Queen we're talking about. Queen is a whole other different level of bands. So I just can't. And then last year, they came out with a North American tour with Adam Lambert, Brian May, and Roger Taylor. And their launch date was in Arizona. And so when I saw that, this was back in January 2017. And I worked with my dad at the time. So I went down from my office and went down into his, and I sat down, and he goes, what's up? And I went, so I know I don't ask you for much, but Queen is coming out with a new tour, and their first date is here in Phoenix. And I was wondering if I could get tickets. And he was like, well, how much are they? And I was like, I really don't even know. But that's all I'm really asking for is just to go see Queen live because they're my all-time favorite band, and I love you guys. So February, they went on sale, pre-sale for, I think it was Live Nation members. So he got them. And the tickets weren't even that bad because I was actually looking at them because I was going to buy it and just go by myself or take my mom or something. They were like $45 for the seats that I was looking at. And that was actually really good seats. So then I get a text from my dad. I was at work, and he goes, I just bought Queen tickets. All three of us are going. They're going to be here in a couple weeks. And I was like, Dad, I'm at work. Can you please not make me cry right now? Because I'm not in the mood. I've already cried once today. I'm not trying to cry again. And you know what? Yep, you're just going to make me cry. So I'm just going to go to the bathroom. I'm just going to cry it out, and then I'll come back. So the concert comes, and the stage was set up just like Brian May's guitar, which Brian May's guitar was actually homemade with him and his father. They took pieces of like a fire mantle and everything else and built it. So what's incredible too about Brian May's guitar is that it has its own sound. When you hear it, you know that's Brian May's sound, and that's what differentiates them from other bands, is that they have a specific sound because of Brian May's guitar and Freddie Mercury's vocals. That is what puts them so far up above other bands, is that Brian May had a homemade guitar. So the stage was set up like Brian May's guitar. And I didn't realize, it didn't click with me until we were looking around at the gift shop they had, and I got a couple of t-shirts. And they had the Robot from the News of the World album. And I was like, why is there so much of this? And then I was like, oh my God, the album came out in 1977. It's the 40th anniversary of the album. That's why they're coming out with it. So I'm sitting there and I'm telling my parents, and you have all these people who were there to see the show, and they didn't know one thing about the band. And it drove me insane. And I kept looking at my parents. I said, I swear to God, I'm going to have a panic attack. These people are driving me insane. They don't know anything about this band. I don't know what to do. This is freaking me out. One kid in front of us actually knew a little bit, because he was like, oh, that's the White album that they have. And his girlfriend was like, isn't that the Beatles? He's like, no. He goes, that's like the logo that's on the White album. That's like got the one with Bohemian Rhapsody. And I was like, all right, you didn't name the album's name, but I'll give it to you because you at least knew what album Bohemian Rhapsody was on. So I'll give that to you. But we're sitting there, and they have the Robot. They make like stomping sounds, like he's coming in, and he lifts up the center TVs to make it seem like he's lifting the roof off the theater, like the 1977 album. And as soon as they came out on stage, I cried. I cried the entire concert. And when they started singing Love of My Life, I was crying even harder, because I'd actually just gone through a breakup at that time. But it wasn't because of that. It was just, that's one of my all-time favorite songs. And then to hear it live, having the live version being your favorite, you're just like, oh my God. And then seeing your favorite band that you've adored since you were 12 it's incredible. So my mom looks at me and she goes, are you crying? And I went, yeah, I've been crying the whole concert. And she was like, oh my God. And so we're driving home, and I told him, I was sitting in there, and I told him, I was like, I cried the whole concert. And my dad goes, why? And I said, this was my favorite band, and I just got to see them live. Like, I'm getting choked up now just talking about it. I got to finally see them live. Granted, it wasn't with Freddie Mercury, but I still got to see him live. And that's one of the things that I've always wanted to see almost my entire life. That's all I've ever wanted. And I said, and I got that. And I said, that's one of my dreams come true. It's hard to explain. For those who love a band so much that when they get there, they actually start crying because the music takes them back to so many memories and pain that the music has gotten them through, it's really overwhelming. So that's what the band did for me. So I would love to keep going, but I'm reaching my final 2 minute and a half. Next week, I'm probably going to talk about Mel Brooks for half hour, and then Quentin Tarantino for the other half hour, which is kind of a weird mix, but the two are just amazing. And I feel like they'd be a really good example for this show, because they really played a huge part in movies, how we do movies today, especially Mel Brooks. And then after that, I'm talking about Back to the Future, and the week after that is just one of the final shows that I'll have before we go on to Christmas break, which is going to be about the best Christmas music to binge watch with the ones that you love and your family. So, thank you guys for listening to me go on about Queen. I would love to make this radio show the Queen Show, where I would talk about an album every single hour, every single week, but I can't. So, the movie was all right in my opinion. It gets the basic gist of what happened in the band, just in the wrong timeline. So, if you want to go see it, yeah, I'd go see it. Or if you just want to wait for it to come out on Netflix, do that. Either way, I really don't care. So I will see you guys next week. Have a great night, and take it easy.